In the next module, we're going to move on to actually exploiting a SQL injection risk. And when we start doing that, we're going to be working in the browser. And specifically, we're going to be working with manipulating the URL. Now, I want to give you an example of a URL and then talk about how this translates into a query. So here's a really simple example. mysite.com. Doesn't matter which site, but you can see here that there is a path called color, and it's passing a query string parameter called color ID with a value of 4. Now, SQL injection is all about manipulating the parameters in the web application such that it can actually change the underlying query. Now let's take this URL. Inevitably, this is going to get us the color with the color ID of 4. So let's switch back over to SSMS and have a look at what that query probably looks like. We could make a pretty fair speculation that when that URL we just saw is hit, it generates a query that does something like this. That's a pretty safe bet. It's going to take that number 4 from the URL and add it to a query like this. Now here's the crux of it, and this is really the crux of the entire SQL injection risk. This number 4 is untrusted data. So what I mean by that is that it comes via an externality. It's in the URL. It could be changed, and inevitably, if we change this from 4 to say 5, you'd get another color. This is simply the way web applications work. It's very fundamental stuff, but what we're going to start probing away at in this course is what happens when instead of 4 or 5, we start adding more query syntax here. Because you see, the 4 is data. Everything to the left of the 4 is query. Query, data. Query, data. There are two really distinct components that we're looking at on the screen here. And this piece of data comes from that untrusted source where it can be changed. So in this case, it comes via the URL. But let's go back and have a look at this query that we created just a bit earlier. This one where we actually changed the color. It's the same sort of thing here. We have two data attributes, the original color and the renamed color. And everything else here is the actual query syntax itself. So everything from the update statement here, all the way through to the where clause that checks the value of the name. And in fact, even that last single quote would be part of the query. The data is violet and purple. So let me jump back and show you a slide of what the web application's probably doing with this. Inevitably, that query we just saw looks just like this. So this is probably a post request to good old mysite.com, and we're changing the color. We're telling it what the old color was via the request body. So in other words, probably a form variable that's been posted with the request. And then of course, we're telling it what the new color is. Purple and violet, untrusted data because they're posted by the browser. I could change these. If this feature is designed for a user to be able to send the old color and the new color to the website, then there's nothing to stop them from changing purple and violet to whatever they want. Well, actually, that depends. If there is nothing to stop them, then they might be able to exploit a SQL injection risk. And indeed, in this course, we're going to talk about the things that should stop someone if they're not passing legitimate data. So that's a bit of an overview of how actions in the browser translate to queries in the database server. I want to move on and have a look at one more thing before we wrap up this module, and that's internal exceptions in the database server.